أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So we'll do a quick review of the 3 chapters, and then I'll tell you the format of the exam and the place, etc. of the exam, and then I'll answer any questions you have. Also, Tuesday session is reserved for Q&A, inshallah. And then we have the exam on Wednesday, and inshallah we'll start chapter 11 on Thursday. So any of you accessed the simulation that I uploaded in Blackboard? Okay, Shok has. Okay, the simulation will really settle all the understanding in your mind, and you will be ready. But even without that, if you review the material that we studied and so forth, that will prepare you for the exam. But the simulation will make the exam look like child's play if you do the simulation. Okay. All right. So we have 3 chapters in the exam. The first one was chapter 8, and we started talking about a representative sample, which is a sample that has the same distribution as the population, if you recall. And then we have the sampling risk of taking a sample that is not representative, and we talked about 2 different types of errors, a type 1 error and type 2 error. And then the opposite of this sampling risk is the confidence level. If you have 5% risk, you have 95% confidence level. And then we discussed the tolerable error. Tolerable error is how much you can tolerate in error in your sample and still say the sample is, the account is fairly stated or the control is effective. And expected error is how much error you expect in the population. The difference between the two, the expected minus the tolerable, is the precision. We calculate the precision by subtracting the tolerable from the expected. And we had a table where we discussed when to sample and when not to sample, when to do the whole thing, when to look at the whole thing. So it's a very good place to ask you good questions from. So make sure you know where to sample from and where not to sample from. Types of audit sampling, the 3 types: attribute sampling, the monetary unit sampling, and classical variable sampling. Make sure you know the steps in all of them and the details that we discussed. We discussed the advantage of statistical sampling, why statistical sampling is better. And then, we discussed attribute sampling in detail, both statistical as well as non-statistical. So this is what we covered in chapter 8. So I'm going to go through an overview of all 3 of the chapters, and then I will give you opportunity to ask me questions from any chapter you like. Okay. Then we have chapter 9, where we discuss something called substantive testing, which is the heart of the audit, which is testing the financial statements with the help of documents, etc. And we discussed 2 different types of sampling methods: monetary unit, and we also discussed the non-statistical monetary unit sampling using a different formula than the monetary unit sampling statistical method. And then the last one we discussed was classical variable sampling, and these follow pretty much the same format: plan, perform, document, right? What is the 4th step? 4th step is document. First step is planning, 2nd step is performing, 3rd step is evaluate, and the 4th step is document. Very good. So we have 4 steps in each one of these sampling methods, and we discussed them, in quite detail with examples and so forth. So make sure you understand all of them, and you can go back to the lectures. They're all there, and some lectures were probably not of good quality in terms of sound, etc. So I gave you a link to the lectures for those um troublesome recordings, to another section. Those low quality videos, I gave you access to other class lectures. So if you still have some others, I can give you access to them as well from another class. So make sure you are up to date. And then we have discussed chapter 10, which we said that is going to be like all the other chapters that will follow. There are 2 parts. One is what the client does, and the second part is what the auditor is supposed to do. So in that, we learned the objective of the revenue process, the accounts that were affected in the revenue process, the tasks, documents, and records that were used in order in the revenue process, and then the segregation of the duties and activities in the revenue process. Make sure you know this by heart, what should be separated and what is problematic if they're not separated, etc. Management assertions. We discussed 3 different sets of management assertions: in transactions and events, in balances, and then in presentation and disclosure. And I went through each one of them and explained. And then when we discussed the substantive procedure and the test of controls, we went through the management assertions that are tested and how they are tested, right? So these are all good places to ask you questions from. And if you understand, the questions are not going to be at all difficult for you to answer. Then we discussed audit risk. Audit risk, we said, is made up of inherent risk, control risk, and detection risk. Inherent risk is decided based on how much inherent risks the business has, and the auditor or the client has no control over them. The auditor just learns about them and decides how much the inherent risk is. The control risk is based on the test of controls, how good or bad the controls are. If the controls are good, then the control risk is low. That means you do not have to perform as much substantive procedures. Once the control risk is set, before the substantive procedures are performed, we have something called substantive analytical procedure, which is testing of some balances and ratios and comparing them with the industry average, as well as prior year balances, prior period balances, before we go into the substantive procedures. And then we have the substantive procedures, which is the heart of the audit, which is testing of the management assertions based on the documents and evidences that we have from the client, and then at the end, giving an opinion. Okay, so these are the topics broadly we covered in these 3 chapters, and I'm going to come back and give you an opportunity to ask me questions on any one of them. The format of the exam is as follows. The midterm is 35% of the entire grade. It includes 3 chapters only, 8, 9, and 10. We'll have 9 multiple choice questions, 6 true-false questions, 1 matching question, so you have to match the right side to the left side or the left side to the right side, and 3 short answer questions. These short answer questions does not require you to write a lot, but it requires you to think, right, about the situation, and then 1 or 2 sentences of answer satisfies the answer. So for this, you should know the procedures, the calculations of the sample, etc. And a good practice, even if you're not able to complete the entire simulation, whatever you can do, printing it and playing with the documents as much as you can, will give you an enhancement, an understanding, to the point that you will be able to answer these questions. Okay. The exam is on Wednesday at 12:30, and you're divided into two rooms, 36 and 37. These rooms are the original capacity of these rooms, if I'm understanding correctly, is to hold 90 students. So they are equipped to hold 90 students, and we're going to have 22. Okay, so it is to accommodate all types of students, special needs and otherwise, so that there is a lot of social distancing uh, between each two of the students, and there is a list in Blackboard that tells you which room you should go to. Okay, in content you have a list of GCR 336, which students should go there, and GCR 37. Anybody looked at that list? Any one of you looked at that list? 22 students in each list. Has any one of you seen that list? It is in Blackboard, just where the slides and other things are, right? There is a list for each one of the rooms. Okay? So make sure you go to the right room. Okay? Make sure you go to your room, and there may be some students not here right now. Make sure you announce in your social media platform. I also announced it in Blackboard as soon as I posted the list, and I'm surprised nobody has looked at it. Okay, make sure you bring a simple function calculator. You cannot use your phone, so make sure you bring a calculator. You cannot share calculators with anybody, so make sure you bring your calculator. Okay. All right, so with that, I'm going to open the floor for questions. Any questions about any one of the chapters? Any questions about the exam? And also we'll do this on Tuesday as well. No questions. Everybody's ready for the exam, or nobody's ready for the exam? Chapter 10. Okay. So the whole simulation is revolving around chapter 10. Okay. With real documents, the documents that you have to examine, all of those are there. So if you print and you start working on them, this will give you a tremendous practice. Okay. I showed you some of those documents as we were discussing. Okay. I showed you parts of them. So this was not 100% unfamiliar with you. Print them, study the chapter, and then read the instructions and work on it. And if you're able to work on it, once you're working on it, if you have any questions, you can ask me. But this will give you a tremendous preparation. Okay. What is meant by entities risk assessment process and monitoring of control? Did you listen to what I said when I explained those? Did you go back? Because I explained this in detail, right? So what do you not understand? Tell me. What is risk? When we say risk, what do we mean by risk? entity's risk assessment process. What does risk mean? There is a risk of any one of the three things that the internal control is supposed to ensure. The risk of recording something in the financial statements that is not true and fair, risk of running operations that is not effective, risk of not following the regulations, right? Risk of violating the regulations. So how does the company that you're auditing assess those the risks? How does the company look at these risks and say, okay, could this go wrong? Could this go wrong? Etc. Etc. Right? That's a risk assessment. What is the company's risk assessment process? The, for example, uh, we are assessing the risk of the spread of coronavirus. So our assessment here is now to see, okay, if the students sit too close together, there may be a spread. So what should we do? We should spread them out. How should we spread them out? We are putting 22 students in a room where 90 students can sit, right? So we are mitigating the risk by assessing the risk. If the auditor comes and looks at this, they will say, okay, they have a good process or they don't have a good process. They will decide, right? So this is the risk assessment. Similarly, there are risks of fraud and stealing. So if you're putting the same person to record the journal entry as well as deposit the cash, that means they can hide the deposit and steal the money, etc. So there is a risk of fraud, right, and a misstatement in the financial statement. So what is the entity's process of doing that, right? And monitoring of control is once the control is put in place. So let's say two people are supposed to do the work. Monitoring the control is to ensure that two people are doing the work continuously and not one person, right? So that's monitoring. When we give you the exam and we say, write in your own exam, look at your own exam, don't look at anywhere else. That's internal control. Monitoring is to make sure that you are doing that, right? You follow? Does that make sense? Okay. Other questions? How many of you have studied for the exam? You feel ready? Half ready? Not ready 100%? Same. Let's see what is your readiness. What is your readiness for the exam? Those who are here, 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, 100%. How much are you ready? Let's see here. Babios's first two chapters. We have 19 out of 44 students attending the class today. There are other 25 students who are not in the class. 25 students not here today. And of them, of the ones who are here today, 11 probably are not even listening because I don't see them responding to this question. So here, 11 students uh, did not respond. Zainab Abdul Rauf said, midterm week it is so hard to attend classes. You must understand that, before I'm sitting here as a teacher, I sat as a student for 20 plus years, right? Uh, the university experience is such that there are ups and downs, there are difficult weeks and there are easier weeks. And it is not designed in such a way that you have to skip one activity to do another one. You have to manage them. Okay, you have to manage all the activities, and that's what makes you not just a good student, but this is how life is. This is how life is. You have to manage the loaded periods of time, and you have to manage the otherwise, right? So this is, you cannot uh, skip something. You cannot tell your family there will be no lunch today because I have to proctor a midterm exam, right? You cannot do that. So you have to do both. You follow. This is preparation for life, preparation for work, preparation for you to handle your life, right? Similarly, results of the exam are also results of the exams are also something that you uh, should be able to handle, right? Getting an A may be easier than handling an F, but handling an F prepares you for life, because life is not, always 100% successful, full of successful activities. Life is not 100% successful, full of 100% successful activities all the time. So there are ups and there are downs. If you're able to not handle them, right, then you're not prepared for life. Do you follow what I'm saying? Are you following? Those that are listening, are you following? So you have to handle, you have to manage, you have to manage both. You cannot skip something because you have to do something else. You have to manage both, right? If you're not able to manage, if you have so many courses that you're beyond, this is beyond your capacity, then that means you're taking too many courses, right? And if you tell the students you're taking too many courses, they say, I have to graduate. I have to graduate by such and such time. Why? What will be a big difference in your overall scheme? Think about it, right? You're, let's say you're graduate and you're going to work. So let's say you're going to work 30 years. If you take one more year for graduation, you'll take work for 29 years. Big deal. What's the big deal, right? The issue is you're overloading yourself during this year, stressing yourself out. This is actually taking away something else from your life. It is taking away your health, your long-term well-being. It's taking away all of that from you. So if you're overwhelmed, if you're taking so much that you're not able to enjoy and handle the other things in life, then that is, you're overloading yourself, right? This is not necessary to do. The general thing that people always have is, well, after I finish this, I will focus on that. Well, that will never come. If you accomplish something, there is going to be another accomplishment that you have to target, and there will be another one, and you'll never be able to do something that you always wanted to do. So you have to do simultaneously. You have to make room for the things that you like to do and the things that you have to do simultaneously. Are you following? Anything that I teach you in auditing and so forth is less important than what I'm telling you right now, because the auditing knowledge, if you never audit, maybe it will never uh, be as useful to you in life. But what I'm telling you right now, this is something that every single one of us have to deal with. We have to deal with, every single one of us will deal with it. Okay? Are you following? Is anyone listening, or am I talking to my screen? Does it make sense? Does what I'm saying make sense to you? Okay. Any questions? Any questions for me regarding the exam or otherwise? Kaltham says this is my aspect. Elaborate on that. Kaltham, what do you mean by that? What I said, meaning balancing, right? Doing multiple things. Is that what you mean? The whole thing, right? You have to balance, and you have to be kind to yourself. You have to be kind to your health. You have to be kind to, when I say health, not just physical health, but mental health, right? Taking care of yourself is important. Taking care of yourself is important. If you end up just continuously doing things that you don't like to do, right, this will bring you down. If you continuously do things that you don't like to do, right, if your life is full of things, 80% of the things that you're doing, you don't like to do, then that's not a good situation, right? Yeah, of course, we have to do, all of us have to do certain things that we don't like to do, but we need to minimize that. We need to do as little as possible of that, right? And if we can change something about something that we don't like to do, right, so that it becomes tolerable, then we need to do that. We need to make that change, right? We need to make that change. All right. So study, and I will answer questions on these chapters again on Tuesday, inshallah. Hit the simulation if you want to really learn the material. Okay? I will see you on Tuesday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.